My name is Francisco Jara. I'm the founder of Giving Business Soul and the Mortgage Phoenix Group. And I feel extremely grateful to be greeting such an incredible group of professionals, as well as because today I'm going to be sharing with you a methodology that can radically alter the way that you approach sales, as well as being able to plant a seed in your consciousness about a philosophy that can re-inspire the way you show up as business professionals. I want to also say a quick thank you to Gabriella and the Embrace team for putting on such an amazing event. Gabriella, thank you so much. You know, when her and I were discussing what part of the Giving Business Soul philosophy I could share with you in about 45 minutes that you can immediately adopt, that it can immediately have a big impact on you, it was this, the soulful selling approach. And I know that as entrepreneurs, sales professionals, we have all heard about the ABCs, right? Always be closing. But the truth of the matter is that entire process is completely played out. And the truth of the matter, as we heard earlier, no one likes to be closed. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you today instead then is the new ABCs, the always be connecting. And you may have heard this before, and it sounds really cool, but what I want to share with you today are really the principles that will allow this to happen inside of your consultations. I'm going to really deliver you this art of human connection that can really drive sales like nothing else, and that's been my own experience. And just to kind of set the table a little bit here, this is certainly not NLP. This is not neuro-linguistic programming. This is about learning how to become an authentic human being and coming from that place. So to kind of set this up, what I want to share with you is a little bit about how this methodology came to be and how this Giving Business Soul philosophy emerged from my own personal and somewhat painful story. So my life in business gets started when I'm 13 years old. My uncle hands me my first business book, and it's called How to Win Customers for Life. He engraved in it, the more you learn, the more you will earn. Love your Theo. And I loved this book as a 13-year-old, and that's not supposed to happen. And, I kind of like to say that it was like the musician getting his first instrument. My uncle tells me at that point in time, he says, hey, all great business leaders and CEOs, they read 6 to 8 books every single month. And as an ambitious young man that I was, I decided I would stay on a similar pace. And so all through high school and through university, I learned everything that I could inside of the field of business, leadership, personal development. And so when I graduated with a degree in economics, I decided, even though I was privileged in the sense that both my uncle and my father had very successful companies, I decided to venture on into my own path and go into the world of mortgage. And given my preparation, 2 years in, I opened my own company. 2 years after that, I have 85 employees, and I have 4 different offices through Southern California. I wanted to become the largest originator and funder of Hispanic loans in the country. And I was really on top of the world. 2005, we're doing close to $7 million of revenue now, probably equivalent to about 15. And I felt like I really couldn't do anything wrong. I ended up getting the Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2005 for Los Angeles SBA. And in 2006, I'm on vacation. And I'm on the North Shore of Hawaii in a beautiful rental, and all of a sudden I'm showering, and I feel a rather large lump in my right testicle. I had just read the Lance Armstrong book, and I pretty much self-diagnosed myself. I said, I think I got it. I get back to the mainland, go to my doctor, general practitioner, eventually I go to the oncologist, and I remember getting that phone call like it was yesterday. I get the phone and I pick it up. I'm in my office. He gives me the news. I hang up the phone. And I kid you not, I started to do the fist bump like Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant. He was a big hero of mine because of his discipline. And I was assured that I had at least stage 2 cancer and that I had to go back for additional tests to see if it had spread through my lungs and into the brain. I knew, and the reason I was doing the fist bump is that I knew all great leaders need great adversity. And I felt this is going to be my challenge, so I thought. I go back, and certainly I got tumors all over my lungs. Fortunately, though, not in my brain. I immediately get into the chemo. At that time, I had my first son. The second one is in the womb. So I had a lot of reason to live. And I faced that challenge, and by the grace of God, I obviously made it through. In 2008, thank you. And in 2008, I'm literally on top of the grenade that pretty much starts the Great Recession and bad mortgage debt. And I had to file a multi-million-dollar business bankruptcy. And then I thought to myself, hey, this is what happens, I'm going to have to go through these challenges. I can get back up, no big deal. As long as I have my beautiful wife and my 2 sons, I can get through anything. And then the one that really just breaks my back, the divorce, right? And that's what I call the 3 great life awakeners. Life awakeners, because anytime you face death of any kind, it just reorients you, right? Essentially losing the most significant relationship, if anyone's ever done that, it's like a death. Losing all your money is equivalent to survival in our life, in our world. So losing all your money is another death. And then, actually facing your own mortality in a cancer, you're going through death. And so I didn't hit rock bottom. I literally felt like I was at the depths of the ocean floor. And synchronistically, I ended up finding myself at the informational evening at the University of Santa Monica to inquire about spiritual psychology. Spiritual psychology. I thought to myself, I got an AA in psychology, but I'd never heard about spiritual psychology. And ultimately, psychology is the study of science of mind and behavior. That's what it says in the dictionary. But when you actually open up the word, psyche means soul. Ology is the study of. So psychology should have always remained the study of the soul. But what we do in the Western world, we tend to kind of strip soul out of everything. And what spiritual psychology aimed to do was reintegrate the soul inside of the overall human condition to get a deeper understanding of what really drives behavior. And so I became enamored. And at that point, I literally could not gain any momentum in business. I have a superpower, and that's discipline. And everything that I learned to get myself to the top of the mountain was no longer working. My prayer in the morning, my gratitude, my affirmations, going and working out, none of it was working. And when I got to that informational evening, the teachers told me these words that I invite you to write. They said, your outer experience in life is a reflection of your inner reality. Your outer experience is a reflection of your inner reality. And that thing went off like a tuning fork in my body. I knew right then and there what was the issue. Because I hadn't addressed the pain and the hurt and the trauma of those different things, I could not gain momentum. The world was reflecting what I was feeling inside. I felt like a failure. I felt a tremendous amount of shame for losing everything. And the world was simply reflecting that back. I would do 0 loans, 1 loan, 0, and I'm a master at my craft. And I just couldn't gain momentum. So I got deep to work. I started to address these pains. I started to integrate them through the psychological frameworks that they offered. And all of a sudden, I was stunned. My business started to gain momentum again. And I have been a personal development junkie. I've read about 800 books, up at that point, maybe 500. And I literally found none of this understanding inside of the text, inside of the seminars, like how to properly heal. And as I addressed those parts of my story, I started to go into the 21 years of my life. And as I started to integrate all of that, all of a sudden, I started to gain trajectory once again. And on December 21st, 2012, I established the Mortgage Phoenix Group. And if you guys all remember, those are Hispanic, and we remember the Mayan prophecy that at the point of December 21st, 2012, an entirely new kind of world would begin to emerge. And I wanted the Phoenix to represent that. I had been studying business and nonprofits, and these two types of organizations, business is masculine, Nonprofit is feminine. I like to say philanthropy, this love of humanity. And I thought, what if we integrate them? What if we bring them into the same organizational structure? And that became the genesis of the Mortgage Phoenix Group. And so I started to use my business as a force for good, as a force for God. I wanted to start to build homes for women and children and start tithing every time we closed a transaction. 2013, I went to Nicaragua, 14, Guatemala, Colombia, Peru, a couple different times. And then we found on the other side of the San Diego border an organization where we could go more frequently. And now I can report back that we've built about 40 homes as an organization, but we haven't just donated the money. We've actually gone to build with our own hands. And that, my friends, has turned our organization into a thriving, beautiful culture that is very rich in transformation. And after sort of finding this sort of holy grail, if you will, this great treasure, in 2021, I established Giving Business Soul, which is an organization that is dedicated to teaching other entrepreneurs how to come into fulfillment, how to come into purpose through this methodology. And one of the different things that we teach is this approach here with Soulful selling. So as a beginning stage here, what I want to tell you is this. Write this down as well, because I think this is very eye-opening. Anytime you begin any action in life, ask yourself, what is the essence of this beginning? What is the essence of this beginning? Meaning every time you birth an action, you're coming from a frequency. You're coming from a vibration. You're coming from an energetic start. What is that, right? The great Nikola Tesla told us this. Everything is energy, vibration, and frequency. We have lived in an Newtonian world which sort of depicts the material, everything is cause and effect, but underneath is the quantum world. And that is all based on energy, vibration, and frequency. And I would certainly take a picture of that map that you see on your screens. This is called the map of human consciousness. The map of human consciousness. It's taken from a book by Dr. David Hawkins. It's called Power versus Force. And what he does is literally lay out all the energetic emotions from the very lowest to the very highest. And as you can see there, at the very base of that, you have stuff like shame, guilt, fear, desire. That lower end, you can call that the survival state of human consciousness. It is a fear frequency cage that we get caught in, otherwise known as the matrix, right? And so the upper side of this is the higher state. And so think about it from this standpoint. You know, when you begin any action, think about when you want to start a nice health protocol. You want to get healthy. And it starts off because one day you look at yourself in the mirror and you do not like what you see. You say, you know what, today's the day. I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. Where are you birthing from? You're birthing from shame, right? So shame is all of a sudden attached to this great intention of good health. And what will happen? It won't hit its target. The frequency is much too low. What if instead you start from love? You start from something greater, understanding that this is the temple. This is the vessel that houses the divine spirit, where all the greats have said, hey, this is where the kingdom of God is. Imagine approaching your health from that understanding. Now that's got sustainability, that's got power, because love is such a great thing. And the same thing goes for our business. When we lead from the lower end, how can I make more money? How can I close? You know, what can I say to this client to get them to say yes? Instead, what if we come from the higher origins of service? You know, what is the greatest service that I can provide my client? What exactly, how can I wow my client? How can I really position my product that most benefits our client? When you start to come from that place, that is of a higher frequency. And in 2024, our excuse my French, our bullshit radars are very high. They're very heightened now. We can immediately sense when someone is either trying to close us or trying to BS us. And more than ever, you can create an energetic texture that comes from this higher place. So to get started inside of this soulful selling, this is the old way, right? What you learn maybe in NLP is this idea of building rapport, finding commonality, right? Going through their LinkedIn, finding what they like, sort of studying them. Also this idea of mirroring. We've heard that many times in sales of hitting the same tone, the cadence, and all that kind of stuff. An active listening, maybe repeating the last couple of words inside of that person's sentence. That's how you build rapport, but that's the old way. As I like to say, it almost kind of feels like a little bit of artificial intelligence. It's sort of a mechanism that isn't authentic. And instead, what I'm going to share with you, this idea is about really come and become authentic through the 4 principles of this art of human connection that I'll be going through here. And as a starting point, though, you guys all remember the great movie Avatar by James Cameron that came out just over a decade ago? That thing became a worldwide phenomenon, and it was the highest grossing movie at the time. And there was something, I believe, that struck a chord at the human soul. And if you remember what they would say, the avatars, like, I see you, I hear you, right? At the very base of every human, we want to be seen and we want to be heard. And when you can create an energetic container, a space inside of your consultations that give people this sense, this feeling, it does wonders for your consultation. And I know that it did that for me, and it was so powerful that I actually had to have a tissue box inside of my consultations, because in this high-paced world, people do not feel seen, they do not feel heard. And when you can give them that experience, it's very, very emotional for people. And so the very first thing is in this 4 principles is seeing through soul-centered eyes. The great poet Pierre Chardin told us this. He says, we are not human beings who have an occasional spiritual experience. We are instead spiritual beings that are having the human experience, right? We are a soul before we are a body. And when you kind of orient your reality to that, something very powerful happens. I know that it did that for me, because prior to understanding what I'm teaching you here, I was somewhat of a materialist. I literally just kind of thought once in a while I'll have this spiritual experience. I remember when my wife at the time gave birth to my 2 sons. It was like one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. But when I started to understand that I was a spiritual being having a human experience, everything kind of really began to change for me. And so one of the codes inside of this, what I want to share with you, is this idea that about breathing through your nose in your consultation. The human race is not meant to breathe through your mouth. When you activate mouth breathing, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, which puts you immediately in fight, flight, or freeze. And that sends an energetic frequency of fear. Literally, if you just mouth breathe, your nervous system thinks that the tiger's chasing you, and your body begins to freak out. And over 50% of the human population is suffering from chronic disease that is due through stress. 50% is mostly due to the fact that we actually mouth breathe. We're designed as a human species to breathe through the nose. And when you breathe through the nose, you regulate your nervous system immediately. So when you're sitting there with your clients, you start breathing through your nose, and I want you to begin to gaze at them. We've all heard the idea that the eyes are the window to the soul, but specifically, it's the left eye. The left eye is the one that's connected to the heart, which is the seat of the soul. If you just kind of gaze in there, you're not wanting to stare, you're gazing inside of that left eye. Very soft, like, how are you? I mean, as we all know, it's difficult being a human being right now. And when you just kind of just gaze in, it's just like, how are you? Like a genuine, like deep, really inquiry, right? So that's the very first principle. The second one is heart-centered listening. This one was so powerful for me when I learned it, because I thought I was a good listener, but I was just really good at gathering information, waiting for people to pause so that I could interject. And what I started to learn inside of this is that you don't want to be about you in conversations. It's all about them. And understanding this, I think for me, literally changed the dynamic for me when in the way that I related to others. We're wanting to listen for information, but more importantly, the meaning underneath what people are saying, right? And as well as the meaning, I also want you to start to really deeply cue into people and listen for the energy that resides on words. That gives us a lot of information. Women, you're very good at this, right? As Van was saying, women, you guys have a superpower already. And I mean, you've heard your partners maybe talking about something and you can hear it. Something's off, what's going on, right? And the same thing goes inside of your sales consultations. Activate that divine intelligence that you have. And then the fourth thing is giving people your undivided attention and presence. This is so big. Right now, as Van was saying, we have very short attention span. And what I would do inside of my consultation, I would literally, get the consultation started. I would put my phone on airplane, and I would tuck it away inside of the drawer. And I would do that intentionally because I was sending them an energetic cue that, hey, there's nothing more important right now than this moment right here. I'm here with you. Let's go. I'm going to go into a deep, mortgage consultation. And so when I first learned this, the first weekend of the spiritual psychology program, they taught us to simply close our mouth, listen, and repeat these words. So here's another code. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Meaning every time that there is a pause or a break in the conversation, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And begin to digest people. We are known as sentient beings. Sentient comes from the Latin word of sentir, which means to feel. Our superpower and why it's such a big deal to become human is because we can feel. And when you start to engage with clients in that way where it's like, I hear you, I hear what you're saying. I kind of would do that a little bit too loud sometimes inside of my consultation. I was literally feeling what they were saying, and instead of coming from my mind, I started to come from here, from the body, from my soul. And I wasn't premeditating what I was saying. I was feeling the energy and then coming from that space. The next is perception checking. I don't know about you. Have you ever seen two people in a conversation and you literally realize that they're on different pages? Right? It's so funny to watch where somebody might have taken a left turn and the other person is not even with them. So what perception checking is all about, it's very simple. Once you're asking them about maybe life insurance and they're starting to tell you a little bit about why they're there and maybe what's happened that sort of prompted this, you're simply, again, mouth closed, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, and you're really just digesting them. And then when they're all done sharing what they need to share with you, you say something to the effect, listen, this sounds really important, and I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right. What you're saying is that you're here because you had an unfortunate death in the family with the late uncle, and that caused a lot of grief in the family because they were not financially prepared. And so as a result, you're here because you don't want to leave your family in the same predicament. Am I hearing you right? Yes, you are. And when people hear you perception check, you can reiterate very clearly and concisely what they just said for 5 or 10 minutes, and you're just there hearing them. All of a sudden, it's like, boom, people begin to open. They begin to let their walls down. And when that is starting to happen, you're going to start to develop deeper human connection. Asking open-ended questions. Again, Van sort of spoke about this, right? It's understood that the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. And so goes the exact same thing inside of the world of sales. When you get really good at asking questions, people begin to open up a lot more fully. And I don't know about you, but at 47, I kind of am tired of myself. And so when I get in front of another human being, I'm genuinely interested. I'm very curious. I lead with that curiosity. And again, it's like, hey, how are you? How's it going? And I really want to inquire, like, what's brought you here? Tell me a little bit more about your life. Tell me what's happened. And when you start to come from that really authentic place, again, people just really begin to open. And as Van said, people just want to talk about themselves. And they want to share. It's very difficult right now in 2024. The amount of pressure and change that is happening is just mind-boggling. So, this is another portion of this to kind of bring it all together here, identifying the why. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Simon Sinek. I think it's called Starting with Why. He's got a really powerful line in there. He says, people do not buy what you sell. They buy why you sell it. Why do you sell insurance, and why have you chosen farmers? Understanding your origin for why you began insurance and why you've chosen farmers, I think will go a really long way. And this process here is to help you do that. The idea is to ask yourself 5 times to 6 times to possibly 7, why? After you give the answer, isolate the answer and then ask why. And ask why again and ask why again. And when you get down to it, eventually you will get down to the core. For me, when I started selling and doing mortgage, I really saw the amount of wealth that my family created through owning real estate. My father has 500 employees as a restaurant owner, and if you ask him, how did you make your money? He will say real estate. It wasn't the restaurant business, it was real estate. It's kind of like McDonald's says, right? That we're not a food service industry, we're in the real estate industry. And I really felt that was the fastest and most powerful way to grow wealth. So what I would tell my clients at the beginning of the consultation would say, normally they would come into my office. I'd have a very elaborate system. I was in the top 1% of my organization for a long time in President's Club myself. And when they would come in, I would be debriefed on the initial discovery call. And when they would come into the room, I would again be very intense about creating that container for them. And inside of that, we would normally do a little bit of an icebreaker. And once I went through the icebreaker, I would then move into it and say, hey, before we go too much further, I want to share why I do mortgage. I really believe that buying a home is the fastest and greatest way to create wealth in the world. And as a result, I find it my specific responsibility to make sure I structure your finances correctly and efficiently before you buy. And then once you're in the home ownership, continue to guide you along financial milestones to help you pay off that home as quickly as possible. So you can think of me more as a financial advisor that helps to structure your mortgage. And I would say, how does that sound? They said, that sounds fantastic. And I said, okay, well, wonderful. Well, with that said, though, I want to see if you can help me understand why is it so important for you to buy a home, okay? And inevitably, clients would say something to the effect, well, the reason it's so important for me to buy a home, I just want to make sure I'm in the right neighborhood and I got the right payment. I said, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Sounds like, this right neighborhood, right payment is important, but help me understand. Why is the right neighborhood and the right payment so important? Well, Francisco, I have a couple of kids and they're about to get into high school, and that area right there has like the best high school, and my kids are really, really excited about attending that high school. That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. I really commend you for doing this move for your kids, But help me understand, why is that high school so important for your kids to be in? Well, the thing is that I want to prep them for college. I want to make sure that they go to college because, to be honest, I wanted to go to college. And my father and mother lost their home in the Great Recession of '08. And I was on a trajectory to go to school, but that move and that loss of the home just kind of took the wind out of my sails. And I didn't end up going to college. And, I love my job, but I really wish I would have went to school, so I really want to set my kids up well. It's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? It's like, wow, that's really, I appreciate you sharing that. Sounds like, you went through quite a bit of pain, and so if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that you want to make sure that you're in this right area so that you can get your kids to the right high school, and eventually you want to get them into college, which was to give them something you didn't experience. So that makes sense on why you want that payment to be right, because you don't want to destabilize or just not have sufficient to make sure you're making the mortgage payment well, and you really want to set them up to do well and be financially stable to be able to provide for their college. Am I hearing you right? Yeah, Francisco, that's exactly right. And I said, okay. And so at this point, I've got an emotional core. And now what you want to do is take the answers and you want to sandwich them all together. So Mr. Mrs. Client, so if we are able to get you in the right neighborhood with the right payment, so you get your kids to that high school and also deliver you that right payment so that you can, not be financially stressed, and maybe you can put some money away into their college fund so that you can set them up to experience something that you never were able to experience, how would that be for you? How would that make you feel? And there's that open-ended question again, right? And it's like, wow, Francisco, man, if we could do that, that would just make me feel like I've done my role as a father and my wife as a mother, and we really have set up our kids to do something we couldn't. So now we got it, right? And so once we had that, then I'd say, hey, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate you opening, and that just allows me to really structure this mortgage correctly, and now that I got a deeper understanding of your really core motivation. So identifying the why is so powerful. This 5, 6, 7 rule, if you begin to master it, it will really begin to open up the way that you engage with your clients. Once I was complete with that, I think that as sales professionals, you have to have processes, you have to have systems to really begin to continue to lead your clients through. This soulful selling approach is so powerful, especially when you interlace it with a very powerful system and very powerful processes. And you want to make sure that you're always leading your clients and giving them the next step and giving them a plan to make sure you're getting them to the finish line. Okay, so I want to kind of bring this to somewhat of a close here. This is another really powerful thing. If you guys are all still with me here, this is called the drop of joy. This will completely shift the way that your interactions and your sales happen. And this is a very simple but very powerful practice that I want to gift you. I know that when I started to implement this, it just started to change everything. So, as you saw already, this is the map of human consciousness. If you see exactly where joy resides, it's at the very highest end of the spectrum here. And so right before your consultations, instead of kind of going into the consultation maybe a bit stressed out, you got a phone call about a policy and you've got some, the nervous system kind of agitated, what you want to do is just give yourself a few minutes. Go into a quiet space, and I want you to remember a recent experience that you had with a loved one. Your lover, your child, your partner, your spouse, and remember the experience of joy that you were feeling. And I want you to evoke it. Bring it back into the present moment, where you feel it moving through your body as if you were there in that moment. And once you feel like you got it right back in, and your sort of smile kind of comes back, and you feel that, it's like, okay, you got that sort of reverberating all the way through you. Then what you do is you go ahead and welcome the clients into the consultation. What happens is that you activating that drop of joy moves the energetic frequency in the room higher. And we all can feel this. I mean, how often have you gone into a room where someone is not having a good day? You can immediately feel that, yes? Right? So imagine now being super intentional and raising the vibration in the room. What we know about people when they come into a sales consultation, they're vibrating apprehensive, they're fearful, they're a little bit closed off. And what you literally do is you create emotional alchemy in that moment. You raise the vibration up. And when you raise that vibration up, they don't even know what you're doing. You're literally playing in the realm of magic, in the realm of the unseen. And all of a sudden, this big toroidal energetic field that you created literally starts to envelop them. And all of a sudden, they begin to open and they feel good. That's what people would tell me when they would come into the Mortgage Phoenix. It feels like I just got out of a spa, in a mortgage office. You imagine that? That is not normal, right? But everything was so intentional about everything that I did. So to wrap this all up, I want to just kind of summarize the soulful selling approach for you, right? Remember this. We are spiritual beings having the human experience. And that on a moment-by-moment basis, I want you to continue to breathe through your nose so you can regulate your nervous system and get out of the fear frequency vibration and move yourself more into the seat of your soul where you get to witness your life so that you can respond accordingly versus react. And I want you to be very intentional about creating these spaces, these containers where people feel seen and where they feel heard. Activate the drop of joy to bring up the vibration in the room. Practice the heart-centered listening where you listen for information, meaning, energy, and give them your full presence by tucking the phone away and sending them the signal that there's nothing more important for them in that moment than you. Remember your perception checking just to confirm you're listening to the right thing by simply regurgitating and repeating back what they've said. And ask those open-ended questions to continue to open people further and further. And become a master of sharing your why you've chosen such a great industry like insurance, and more importantly, why you've chosen the incredible agency of farmers. And that, my friends, is really and also make sure to, just be very intentional with all of these areas, because I know that when I started to share and do this methodology, it just changed everything for me. I started to feel a lot more connected. And I know that by integrating this methodology into your sales, it can really give you and drive growth like nothing else has. And more than that, I think it will allow you to feel connected again to your business. I know that that's what it did for me. But the key to all of this is this. You have to really, to do this effectively, you have to take the journey to know thyself. To know thyself. My friends, all of us, and I mean all of us, have experienced pain, trauma. We have emotional debris that we haven't processed, that we haven't properly healed. And I think that if you can begin to have the courage to go back into those spaces and begin to do this practice of self-forgiveness and proper healing, then that's when your businesses can really take off. Because the truth of the matter is, we all know what we need to do, but yet we don't do it. And the reason that we don't do it is because we haven't addressed these areas that keep us in self-sabotaging patterns, in unconscious tendencies that keep us locked out of our own greatness. And I believe that the world desperately needs leaders who are much more healed, that are beginning an evolutionary process. Because what I know to be true after reading everything that I've read is that there's nothing that moves the needle like evolution. If you evolve as a leader, it moves all the areas inside of your life, your business, your relationships, your health, your finances, your system. It moves all of it. And what we do at Giving Business Soul, and we do just that. We give entrepreneurs the tools, the language, and the frameworks to really begin to do inner work and to do this authentic inner work to become an authentic human being. And what I mean by the language, it's just like the insurance industry. If you do not know the acronyms and the language of the industry, you really can't function very well. Same goes for the inner world, the unconscious, and the soul. We give you the frameworks to see what you cannot see, right? Because God and the universe, however you want to language it, is constantly trying to communicate, constantly trying to take you to the next level. But when you don't understand how to read that, it just keeps repeating itself over and over. And finally, we give you the tools to actually integrate, to bring compassionate self-forgiveness into these areas. And what we decided to do, we've never done this before. The investment for the online curriculum that we have is called the Round Table Mastermind. Mei-Ling Marin is actually a graduate of this program, and I think she would be a testimony to it. She's a powerhouse and really just a feminine leader that is making her, just her mark here at Farmers. And normally the investment is $19.95, and for today and today only, we actually have a little countdown because I've never done that before, but it's $7.95, and it can also be broken up into payments, and it's an online curriculum that you can do self-study. And for those that are interested, I also do one-on-one coaching and mentoring. So if you purchase the online investment, you'll be prompted to go through and schedule yourself for online coaching with me. So with that, thank you so much for your attention, for your undivided energy here. Godspeed, and much love to all of you.